Hello. I thought it might be good to go through the project work, and I'm just going to start with module 4, lab assessment. And if I click on that, I come here, and then that opens this page, which is on GitHub. And I've decided to try out doing things locally in Visual Studio. And so that's what I see here. Okay. And I get the companion information. And I've been able to run the tasks. My grade is still only 83 1/3. I'm not quite sure why that is, but anyway. But it all looks pretty good. So let's just have a look at what we've got, right? So we've been given a few files. We're given calculate gains, and it didn't have all of this stuff in it. I put this in. We have calculate gains over time, and we have functions optional. Okay, let me just make that code a little bigger. Oh, okay, it's going to make everything a little bigger. Oh well. Hopefully that's all right. It's readable. But let's just start with the original scenario, right? So we've got a mobile app that helps people save money, and let's just make it a little smaller maybe. For some reason my hotkey is not working. Still need to scroll that a little bit more. Right, so there we go. So initially the investment engine has to be extended to allow for investors to increase their gain margin if they invest more money. The company has agreed internally that 1 million is a good starting point to trigger the increase, and if the invested amount surpasses 1 million, then a gain margin will be increased by 1%. Similarly, if the amount invested is 5 million, then we'll go by 5% up to a maximum of 100%. The standard gain is 0.1% per month plus 1% each time the amount surpasses increments of $1 million. For example, if the amount invested is $5 million, then the gain margin would be 0.1% plus 5, which is 5.1. So we're going to write a function that for a given invested amount will return the amount plus the calculated investment gains. If the given amount is greater than 1 million, then the app will increase the return by 1%. Okay, so there's the outline, right? So we set a global variable, and we're going to do that, and we want a multiplier amount, which will be the amount that would trigger the increase, and that's going to be set as a global variable. So in this section up here, where it says global variable, we want to do multiplier amount equals 1 million. Okay, and then the rest of that is, so then we get the basic gain amount, right? So total gains 0, total amount is 0 and the gain margin is 0. I believe it says that we have to have at least 1,000, right? The first thing to check is whether the amount invested is greater than 1,000, which is the minimum application value to start using the app. So we do that, and if it's less than 1,000, less than or equal to 1,000, then we just return all of these things previously. Now, one thing I thought was a little odd is even though we're talking about a gain margin as a percentage, the thing that the tests actually need is the fraction rather than the percentage. So you have to divide the percentage gain margin by 100 to get the fraction, right? And then we've got to check whether we've got more than 1 million. And if we've got more than 1 million, I've decided to do it that way, right, with an integer division by the multiplier amount. And that's the extra gain margin. So the total gain margin is the 0.1 we started with plus 1 million into the investment amount. Then the total gains are going to be the investment amount times the gain margin divided by 100. And then the total amount returned is the initial investment plus the gains. And then it wants you to return those 3 things. So it's perfectly okay to return 3 things. You could return them in a tuple, but I believe the tests are expecting it to return 3 individual things rather than a single tuple with 3 entries. Okay, that was that one. Let's go back. Right, we've got a user-defined global variable. We declare a variable to store the gain margin and the total amounts and total gains. If the amount is greater than the minimum value, if the amount is greater than the multiplier amount. If so, we update the gain margin and we calculate the total gains, and we return the total gains, the total updated amount to the gain margin. And the test is if we get that returned. And as you can see here, my tests have passed, right? And it says calculate gains works as expected. And then the next thing was to calculate gains over time. And again, now this is actually a pretty good example of how you should write out what you're expecting the code to do before actually writing the code. It's not a bad practice to get into. The only caution I would advise is make sure that you don't change what the code does relative to the comments. So make sure that the comments are still up to date with the code. That's the only thing I'd say. And let me just show you what my calculate gains over time looks like. Right, so I actually needed to add an import statement to get calculate gains, because I have to use calculate gains here. And with just the information or the code given, it didn't have that import statement. So you've got to do the import statement. I wasn't sure what the difference between these two were, so I just called those I just called calculate gains and got the 3 returns appropriately. And then every time it goes through, it should increment the amount we've got, and then it'll return the appropriate amount. And this one I've just got it so that it prints out the gains over time. Now, one thing that the next piece that they're asking for is to really, we're only interested in down to the cents. So the final thing was to just use the format to print to 2 decimal places of accuracy, as well as including the currency, the 3-digit or 3-letter currency code or country code. But the main thing for me was to use the format string to only get 2 decimal places. Anyway, that's a quick run through of my approach to Module 4, and let me know what you think.